Because our love runs deep, I will fight for you. Dark shades of gray are surrounding you. You are forced to find the light that's inside of you, to keep it lit. But the winds of sin that are constantly blowing your way makes it difficult for you to stay a positive light for those who are around you. You are safe in the very place that is killing you, but you're too afraid to leave because your complexion is a red target for those who are ignorant. They understand your strength, and so they try to belittle it, pulling out weapons that only wound your complexion, thrown to the ground without any explanation. Man, was I lied to when they told me that this was the greatest nation for freedom and human rights? Yeah, the right for you to remain silent as you are read your human rights, right? I step back and I ask myself, what can we do to make this world a better place? What can you and I do to make this world a better place? And it's quite simple, really. In God, we trust. And in God, we must always trust to find peace. To find peace in a world so loud. To open your heart to those who hold judgment is to be free. Free from yourself and your thoughts, to live for joy, to endure pain. Pain. It's the true definition of growth. Each day brings about growth, mistakes and lessons learned, the opportunity to be better than who you were yesterday, the advantage of knowing the past. It's a clear path to your future. Speak words of wisdom within. Unlock your fifth dimension. Come on, speak these words with me. Yeah, you. Speak these words with me. I am free.
I fade into the blade. I live my life, no turning back. I love to stay, but I always fade away. But I always fade away. I fade into the blade. I live my life, no turning back. I love to stay, but I always fade away. But I always fade away. Come on now, take me out to the river at night so I can see the stars shine so bright. Take me out to the river at night so I can see the stars shine so bright. Take me out to the corner of the sea. You say that I would be dead, but take me to the river river where I can rest my head. You say it ain't but a cockfight. Strap a gun to my hip and I begin to twist, and you said you love me just like this. Come on now, take me out to the river at night so I can see the stars shine so bright. Take me out to the river at night so I can see the stars shine so bright. Take me out to the corner of the sea. That if you take me out to the river, I'll be 2, 3, 4 gone. All right, now. Hit me. Thank you. You wait for me to come back home. I sit alone by the phone, and it's been a while since we talked last. You hate me even more that time has passed, and I can't believe it's happening to me, and I can't believe it's happening to me. We all fall sometimes for the damn soul. 'Cause we all fall sometimes for the one to save our lives. 'Cause we all fall sometimes for the damn soul. Waiting on a prince to save our lives. When I was a kid, I thought nothing. Thought I I grew up to be his little wife. But you dropped a bomb on me and blew it all to pieces. And I loved you even more than my own life. And I can't believe it's happening to me. And I can't believe it's happening to me. And I can't believe it's happening to me. And all we are colors of the wind, trying to pretend who we are into the dark. And all we are colors of the wind, trying to pretend who we are into the dark. Sometimes for the tinsel, we all fall sometimes for the one to save our lives. We all fall sometimes for the damsel, waiting on a prince to save our lives, waiting on a prince to save our lives, waiting on a prince to save our lives. I need some love, faith. I need some love. Can the stars watch as we play our souls for us? In your arms we'll sail up into the stars. Trust me, give me just once. Faith, I need some love. Can the stars watch as we play our souls for us? In your arms we'll sail off into the storms. Ooh la la la, ooh la la la. Ooh la trust and love in you. Faith and trust and love is all I can give you. Can you walk on water? Can you swim through the storms? Can you be my forgiveness from the gods I love? Can you walk on water? Can you swim through the storm? Can you be my forgiveness from the gods I love? The storms, 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 storms. Can you walk on water? Can you swim through the storms? Can you be my forgiveness from the gods I love? Can you walk on water? Can you swim through the storms? Can you be my forgiveness from the gods I love?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sheldon Anderson, Vice Chair of the Miami Foundation's Board of Trustees, and it's an honor to welcome you to the historic Hampton House for the 7th Annual State of Black Philanthropy. The historic Hampton House, where I'm standing today, is an iconic segregation-era motel located in the Brownsville neighborhood. Since it was restored a few years ago, it's now a museum and community center, showcasing iconic Black Miami history with restorations of the rooms where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Muhammad Ali, and many others stayed during their visits to Miami. The Hampton House is an important piece of Miami's Black history, and it's the only segregated motel of that era still standing. Throughout the evening, we know you'll be amazed by the talent, work, and impact from across our community through arts and conversation. All of tonight's performances are hosted by our gracious partners at the African Heritage Cultural Arts Center, which has been an artistic and cultural beacon for Miami-Dade's African American community for over 45 years. So let's kick this event off by lifting our minds and spirits with music. Please welcome the New Canon Chamber Collective and Huge Songs, who will perform Lift Every Voice and Sing, also known as the Black National Anthem. This song has become a rallying cry and prayer for Black communities across our country. Please join us in singing Lift Every Voice and Sing. Such a beautiful performance, and what a great way to start our program. To set the stage, let's now hear from the President and CEO of the Miami Foundation, my good friend Rebecca Fishman Lipsy.
If these walls could talk, what would they say about 2022 and how far we've come and how far we haven't? This is the 7th annual State of Black Philanthropy, our chance to recognize the profound impact of Black leadership, of Black generosity in our community, and to build momentum together for a stronger, more equitable Miami, for everyone, with everyone. What I love about tonight is how sincerely diverse this audience is. Every age, every neighborhood, every race and religion, people who fight for racial justice every day, people who are just tuning in to learn more, people who are tired, and people who have never been more fired up, people who are confident talking about race and injustice, and people who don't feel like they have the right words. You're sitting next to each other. Whoever you are tuning in, you are wanted here. You are welcome here. You matter here. This night is for you. To feel uplifted, to feel pushed, to join in, to learn, to feel gratitude, to do more. I want to plant a thought in your minds as we ease into the program. A gentle push for the year ahead. A lot has been said and a lot has been promised this past year in the fight for racial justice. But as I zoom out and I look at Miami's fight, so often I see people pointing fingers, looking for someone to blame, looking for the shark in the water. We need to stop just looking for the shark and start looking at the water. Something is murky in the water that pours into so many systems, our education system, our judicial system, our health system. It cannot be that a few big bad sharks are to blame for predictable outcomes across so many systems. We have to zoom out and have a hard conversation about the water. Be willing to talk about generational wealth creation. Be willing to talk about the impacts of trauma and healing. Be willing to make bigger, bolder, more systemic investments in leaders who have been doing the work for decades and leaders who are just getting started. We need to listen to those who are at the center of the issue and lift up their ideas, invest in their ideas, be the wind on their backs. I hope tonight is a chance not only to celebrate and honor, but also to look at the water. And I hope that all of us remember these conversations as we drink in the status quo tomorrow, to feel uncomfortable in a way that fuels action and to stand together like we mean it. Tonight, we're going to learn from incredible change makers here in Miami. Youth looking towards a brighter future, art that paints a path towards prosperity. And as you enjoy yourself, I want you to know that every vendor that made tonight possible, from the media and production team to our location for the evening, to the food our speakers are eating behind the scenes, it's all Black-led, and it made the evening what it was. To every single person who's here, thank you for standing together. I hope tonight gives you the fuel and the joy and the hope and a sense of urgency to build momentum in 2022.
Thank you, Rebecca. And building off that momentum, we will now join a conversation between three community leaders, Shane Battier, Carrie Ann Royce, and Jared Davis. I'm sure you all know Shane as the Heat Champion, but Shane is also a community champion and a dedicated philanthropist who created Take Charge Foundation with his wife Heidi to provide resources for the development of education of underserved youth and teens. Our friend and valued partner of the foundation, Carrie Ann Royce, is CEO of YWCA South Florida, a nonprofit whose mission is to eliminate racism, empower women, and stand up for justice. And Jared Davis, who just started as a Miami Foundation trustee, serves in a number of civic capacities to assist the South Florida community. He currently serves as chairman of the board of directors of Nicholas Children's Hospital, as a co-founder and general counsel of Emerge America's Global Technology Conference.
So I like to bring up a point that's sort of personal to me. 2 years ago when all this happened, I felt like as a leader who is black, I ended up getting drawn into circles I'm usually not used to, in terms of being a comforter, in terms of being a bridge maker, etc. I'd love to get your thoughts, just mentor me as my peers. Did you feel the same way, and how did you deal with it? What mechanisms did you come up with to figure out how to, it might be you didn't deal with it, you just did ad hoc and just kept going as you could go. But it was almost overwhelming. You felt like, I think at one point I was getting calls, emails, text, multiple times an hour at one point. And I did my best to field it. I said, the frustration also saying, why is it that systems are like this? Why is it this? And, when it comes to Miami-Dade County, I know the systems pretty well, so I did my best to educate and say, well, they work this way here. If you want to affect change, we can do this. We can talk to this person. But it felt like a tsunami was coming, and somebody was asking me, well, can you build a little fence to stop it? Yeah. And it was overwhelming. I'm curious, as black leaders, how do we be those change makers? How do we be that source? People are already looking to us. I know, because of the 50,000 texts, and I know you guys are getting the same. Yeah. How do we be those change makers in society?
Well, it is overwhelming. It was overwhelming. It's still overwhelming. There's no playbook on this. It's not a class in college you take on how to be a leader during social unrest. You take cues from others, and you try to shape it in your own experience. The most important part of all this, and I think what has been the best part from our black leadership, is it's all been authentic. There's no wrong answer, especially when people are genuinely trying to ask for help. Just speak from your heart, and that's what I did. As someone who was a basketball player my entire life, dealing with the microaggressions of being a black basketball player and growing up in a suburban part of Detroit, Michigan. I just spoke about what I knew, and that's enough most of the time.
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
I can say I kind of signed up for this, right?
You're our Valkyrie, our warrior.
Kind of signed up for this. Was I ultimately prepared for when that dam opened? I would like to say that I was, but no, there were surprises to that. There were lots of surprises to that. Especially sometimes people trying to get me to validate my blackness. Kind of like, are you sure this is how the black people feel? And tell me how many and where and when, and guess what? We showed up, I woke up this morning, and this is the experience. And I'm validating it by being here and talking to you, but it is that authenticity that shows up. And it was new for us all. Our phones really rang off the hooks. I think we've all spoken, sat on panels, and added some level of our lived experience to that, but we're not the black experts. I mean, I'm a Jamaican woman running in America. I'm an immigrant woman, and someone would say, what is that dichotomy? Well, that's what South Florida is, because blackness is not a monolith.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So my black experience is different from her black experience and his black experience and his black experience. And so the authenticity comes with those layers. And maybe I couldn't live as authentically in my story in other places in the country.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, it's funny talking about lived experience. I remember about a week or two after it happened, I was listening to people talk about, particularly the issue of interaction between law enforcement and African Americans, and hearing friends, people I knew in the community give certain opinions. You can kind of guess, and the opinions were very much of the line of, well, we know it happens, but whenever it happens, it's probably somebody who didn't deserve it, but they probably put themselves in a situation, etc. And I remember thinking to myself, if I'm just silent, I'm adding to this ignorance. And I said, I'm going to write an op-ed. And I'm just going to write an op-ed, my lived experience. That's it. Nothing fancy, no high balloon philosophies or anything. I'm just going to say what I've experienced out there as a black man. Because I just feel like I need to do it. And the op-ed ended up going viral because it was me saying, you can't just marginalize for your own comfort.
Yeah.
You can't just pretend it only happens to a very tiny portion of black African Americans out there. It happens to all of us, is the key.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
Yeah.
And it goes back to talking about systemic change and systemic impact. But yeah, it was an interesting period.
And in the middle of all that, while we're doing this, I'm mad.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
I am mad.
You're doing self-care. You're
I
trying to
am
moderate your
hurt.
own emotions. Yeah.
I am watching everything that other people are watching. I'm looking at him cry out for his mother. I am picturing him as my uncle, as my brother. I am emotionally spent and showing up for those who want to understand at the same time.
We have seen people step up. If you want to look at my side of the world, Bank of America made a transformative multi-billion-dollar commitment. My firm made a $5 million commitment. The Miami Foundation created its racial equity fund. There's been a number of steps there, but are we moving the dial? I guess is the question. You've got the dollar commitments, and the dollars are flowing. Miami Foundation did $1 million in grants just last year to 19 different organizations focused on social justice. But are we seeing the dial be moved there?
I think we're seeing several things happen. And we're seeing both ends of the spectrum where you have transformative gifts that have been given, like Mackenzie Scott kind of destroying the mold and saying, we trust these female, Black-led organizations who are boots on the ground, and we're going to get out of the way and let you do that work. And then we're seeing on the other side of that needle investments like the Miami Foundation that have come fast, and they have come with a lot of support behind it. So, but in the middle, the support that's supposed to be there, the commitments, $1 million over X amount of years, the $50 million over X amount of years, I feel like the corporate environment's still figuring it out. We're not seeing that flow into the universe of community engagement yet. We're not seeing that touch people's lives yet. I'm glad to see that it's hit a strategic plan, right? And that the resources have been carved out and put away. But I'm hopeful as to how that's going to finally unlock and flow forward. All of us play a part. Every single one of us, grassroots, grass tops, corporate, private, public, we all play this really critical role. And I see it kind of like a map when we zoom out and we all get the pin drops, right? You own a piece in that puzzle. And if you own that piece and you lean into what you're best at, and you create impact there and you radiate that outside of yourself, that map starts to overlap. And that's where you get that radical
There you go.
transformation. That's where that happens. That's where we each have to live and grow from where we are. And I think if we can connect all those dots, that's where it happens. But we have to have some framework of that map. There has to be some backbone that reflects that story back to the community that says, here's the progress we're making, here are the roles we're all playing. And that's the problem with systemic issues, is they're slow to change, they're quiet, they're not fun, they're messy sometimes.
It's real work.
It's real work.
And you need a coordinating force. I mean, what we're really talking about is, as opposed to a separate and disparate amount of resources going out there, something that at some level will coordinate all these resources. I tend to be an incurable optimist. And I'm excited by the fact that I see all these different organizations putting massive resources in. The issue is nobody's coordinating all this.
Yep.
When we had Hurricane Andrew, a group of leaders in town, this is a local analogy, but they created We Will Rebuild. And it was meant to rebuild Miami after Hurricane Andrew, and it was successful because you had a coordinating force of massive resources, whereas those massive resources could have been misspent or misallocated. I almost feel like for systemic racism, you need a coordinating force. That's a big lift, but it can be done. I mean, and I'm also a fan of the fact that when things are at their darkest, that's when true leadership steps up. That's what happened in the civil rights era. When you think about it, that was a massive coordinating force. We knew who the leaders were back then. We kind of need that now on an economic basis. What we had back then on a civil rights basis, we need that on an economic and resource basis.
Let's talk about incentives, though. Hurricane Andrew is a great example. All right, we were one town. We were one South Florida, and so we all needed to come up together. How can we incentivize the people at the top making the decisions, pushing the big button to really move the needle, to make those decisions for
I think
our
the
tribe
network's
again,
doing that.
right?
The network's doing that
You hope.
because the network is calling them out.
You hope.
So now you have to step forward, because if not, you will be called out. You will be visible. You will be, I don't even want to say exposed. I feel like this is good business, and it should have been good business all along. And people should normalize that and not be scared about that. You know, this is why this conversation has been so hard, because prior to 2020, it was not sexy to talk about this in the boardroom.
Nope.
There were no funds or resources being put towards this, and now we're all building capacity.
Yeah.
We're all building capacity.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So the network is there to keep us honest
That's a great point.
and keep the pressure on, and I love the network.
Yeah.
I often feel like leaders take the easier route, which is to say, we hear you, and to keep you happy, we're going to just address components of this, or we're going to claim we're going to boil the ocean and just say we're going to do it all, and you can't boil the ocean.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we need to address that with the leadership. It's a bilateral process. It's like any other relationship.
Luckily, we live in 2022 now, and the availability of data, both publicly and privately, is way more widespread than it used to be. All right, and that's the one hammer that I think we can wield as a community and say, look, here are the numbers. You know, there's a saying in basketball: ball don't lie. Right? Ball don't lie. Numbers don't lie. All right? Here are the numbers. And before the power brokers could sort of dance around those numbers, the numbers are much more available. If we put those numbers out there, there's nowhere to hide. And it's that social pressure that we have to put on the decision makers, the power brokers, that could be a huge, huge factor in getting this done, actually.
And to that point, I think what you just did, Jared, was exactly it. We know what those critical issues are, and we know that the investments are not so sexy. And frankly, what I'm also finding is that there are self-serving responses that are happening.
Of course.
Right? What we know about Black philanthropy is that at the root of Black philanthropy has been sacrifice. At the root of Black philanthropy is sacrifice. It's not taking from your excess to give to others. It's having less so someone else can have. And that's been at the root of grandmothers and Black women who support their grandchildren and nursemaids. It's always been giving of ourselves. And as a person who is a Black woman and an immigrant coming from a society and leading an organization of and about Black women, that's what I feel is missing in corporate philanthropy. It's the element that giving back and giving to is not about giving what you have left or what suits you or what suits your agenda, but seeing the bigger issue that's necessary and then connecting the dots around that story. Because you put the data with it, you connect the dots and you tell the story as to how that, if that moves, we all move. Therefore, there is value to my shareholders to solve that problem that doesn't seem so sexy to us. And it has to feel sacrificial, because that's what taking care of each other is.
Yeah, Carrie, you said
That was perfect.
That was perfect. And you said a really important word: seeing. The challenge for us is, how do we get people to see? Not just look, but to see. When you see and you live it, amazing things can happen.
One of the reasons this facility, the historic Hampton House, is so powerful is it housed a bunch of people who did exactly that. Yeah. Ali helped us see what's possible. King helped us see what's possible. Malcolm helped us see what's possible. Sam Cooke helped us see what's possible. You know, Marvin Gaye helped us see what's possible. You have a lot of people that back in the 50s and 60s saw a vision, and somehow they got people to rally around it.
Yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right. I think that's what you're both right. This is what we need to take things to the next level. And maybe it is that, we keep talking about this whole, we have community activists and corporate activists now. It's one of the positive consequences of Black Lives Matter. The two communities working together bring a lot of credibility. The grassroots brings the credibility of having been there and knowing what's going on. The corporate community acts as a validation point for that, because I think most people in America feel that when those two communities agree on something, it just must be right. Yeah. And so I'm wondering if maybe by having those two communities, maybe that's the true legacy of George Floyd, having those two communities come together, we can get that inspiration and get that roadmap.
That's so true.
2 years ago, the world changed.
Yeah.
I think that's the key, because a lot of people, life is so much about lens. One lens would say, to your point, since 1619. Another lens would say, but there was a sea change 2 years ago in society.
Yeah.
And we are still at that beginning phase of trying to figure out what that means, what that looks like, and what map will come of that. The two issues I keep coming back to is, number one, making sure we don't get lazy and complacent, keep the fire going. And then number two, those bridges, because there's still people, whether it's generational or whatever reason, there's still folks out there who want to just stay in that comfy lane.
Yeah.
And so I think the combination of those two, keeping that fire lit and keeping those bridges going, can get us to that map.
And you're right, that is a sweet spot. And I think if you look at it over the generations, right, there are these like historic moments that happen that just leapfrog us forward. And we've seen it enough now to know it when it happens. And I think we finally recognized it in this moment and recognized we were living history. And therefore, I know for me, we leaned into that. We leaned into what we felt our community needed. We leaned into ourselves. But prior to that, we too didn't have the resources and the voice and the mechanism to fully do that. So we fumbled it. All of us did.
Absolutely.
I mean, the amount of phone calls you got, Jared, the amount of phone calls. How many phone calls did you get of, tell me how to deal with this? Tell me what's coaching and
what are we going to do?
What are we going to do? I don't want to say the wrong thing. Help me navigate this, right? We were all trying to figure it out, but we recognize that moment in history.
We need a bridge. That's what it is. And that, in a way, that goes to the three of us. You're a
It does.
CEO of a major organization. You sit on the board of a major tech company. You have your foundation. I am managing partner of a major law firm, but we're also active in the community. I mean, I always joke with people, can you tell where my day job ends and my community involvement begins? I think then there's a lot of us out there.
Yeah.
And so I think those hybrid people, if that's what we want to call them, those hybrid folks are the key. They're the bridge.
Are we the code switchers?
Code switchers, I like that.
Are we code switching? Because you're right, though, because we've always been complex human beings. All people are. We are Black people. And that at the core of our experience and the fact that we get to, it's a responsibility, yes, because we carry these things as responsibilities, but we get to leave that in the corporate sector. You know, I see it absolutely as a line on my job description that I get to leave the rhythm of the community and install that in every boardroom I enter. That has to remain there, and it has to live there, and it has to have a place there. It's a part of what I feel I have to do in my role, as not just as a Black woman, but as a leader of a nonprofit, because we do need those bridges. But the beautiful thing is that there's some bridges being built on the other side too.
Absolutely.
So we're meeting somewhere in the middle.
That's right.
There's some sweet spot happening. The question is, how do we keep the steady drumbeat? How do we keep the rhythm of the community alive in those boardrooms during this time so that corporate and community can happen? Because you are right. I have never seen so many resources on Netflix and Instagram and places you've just never seen this kind of dialogue. And it's not, if you don't have to go look for it, it's presented in a nice package for you, right? And that's the way that the power of corporate, social, private, public can come together to make change.
For me, emotionally, therapeutically, intellectually, this has been absolutely amazing. You guys are great friends, and I can't appreciate it more. And we got to keep these conversations going in the community. And when I say community, Miami-Dade County, but also state of Florida, United States, the world.
No, I agree. Like I'm re-energized. Because we all are busy people with families and jobs and responsibilities. So even us, people who are fighting on the front lines, you tend to get distracted, and that's what we can't afford under any circumstance.
Keep the safe spaces. Keep the safe spaces for these conversations. The steady drumbeat only happens if people can hear it. So how do we keep the storytelling in the front and make sure that the things that are hard and ugly and not so sexy still get the limelight so we understand what progress looks like? I love that I get to have safe space with people like you. And I hope that we continue to nurture that in other spaces that we get to create.
Thank you, guys. Let's keep doing this.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Femme sage in Haitian Creole, it means midwife. And so what we'll say is midwives catch babies and from Sage we catch communities. For a foundation to actually say, oh, not only are we gonna fund community programs, but we're gonna be funding something specific to racial equity. So that brought high level of visibility to the work that we were already doing in Miami. What the fund does, what it has done, it gives us an opportunity to do the work in a healthy way. And healthy for us in a funding world means that we don't have to do it. It's not like you're getting funding 1 year, right? But that it's like consistent, right? And that it gives us a chance and opportunity to continue to raise the visibility of the work and get more people into the work to shift the conditions so that way we're not seeing another George Floyd.
I'm Jackie Collier, President of the Board of the Historic Hampton House. And I just want to welcome you to the most wonderful place in Miami. The Historic Hampton House has so many stories to tell, and so many stories have been told about this place. People who walked the halls of the Hampton House were absolutely amazing. And the fact that on February 25th, 1964, 4 great men walked these halls, sat in a bedroom in this hotel, and talked about the future of the Black community in the United States. Sam Cooke, Jim Brown, Malcolm X, and Cassius Clay all sat here and talked about what the future should be and what they hoped the future would be. The Hampton House is really honored that we are here at this time in this space, because were it not for some of the leaders of this community, the Hampton House would have been demolished. This Green Book Hotel is one of only 7 remaining in the country, when during the Jim Crow era, there were nearly 1,500 Green Book hotels in America. They've all been demolished, but the dream continues for equality, for justice, and for, just as Cassius Clay said back in 1964, to live in a way that we can be proud of who we are, and to live in a way that others recognize just how wonderful, just how great, and just how much we contribute to this community.
The Miami Foundation is thrilled to announce the creation of the Racial Equity and Justice Video Anthology. It began with an idea after we did video interviews with groups last year to learn more about their work in their own voices. We turned those into a collection and created more video to provide insight, to educate, to uplift their work and the importance of it. We're posting the whole library of videos on our website. We wanted to create a public resource others can use to learn, to share, to start conversations, and to be inspired.
True long-term sustainable social change will only happen if directly impacted communities are leading their own organizations and movements. Long-term power building is going to need mass leadership. How are we creating a generation of leaders?
Trying to get folks to understand that that they're going to have to be transformed themselves, and they're going to have to redefine what does power look like within this institution, and is there an equitable and more ethical way to be with power, and understanding that all sorts of people within this ecosystem have power, and what's a good way for those different kinds of powers and identities to speak with one another and to collaborate with one another.
What we've noticed is that people don't really understand systemic racism at all. We always say it is the water that we're in. It's not the shark, and everybody's looking at the shark, right? And so that's what we try to do to educate folks, is to, wake the consciousness of them to see that. And then once you see that, you usually do better.
It's got to be squarely focused on helping people understand policy. The consciousness raising leads to the civic engagement, leads to what's at the pinnacle of all of this work for me, which is policy change.
I needed someone like myself when I was 14, when I was 15. I needed someone to stand in that gap and let me know that I see you, baby. I see you. I did not have that.
I didn't want to be that guy that got out And yeah, I'm living my life, but I don't do anything to give it back.
We're positive influences. It's another thing, if you're seeing somebody who's already made those inroads before you, it's like, oh wow, it does exist, it is real.
You have to become creative in the ways that you output your intelligence. When you have very little, your mind is able to expand and you're able to create something that you wouldn't believe possible.
We're just trying to build upon these different programs and initiatives to create a real ecosystem of opportunity for our people.
And bringing young people to those conversations. So really born out of a need for young people in Florida to be represented in movement spaces, to be represented in policy spaces, and to connect with one another in ways that they wouldn't have otherwise.
So we went from just like being these, young people doing something just, because we felt we had to suddenly our issues starting to actually take momentum on a national stage.
Maybe the people of the community should have the ultimate say. Now all of a sudden you have a greater system of checks on the power to essentially reshape the entire neighborhoods to their design.
Earlier today, I had a conversation that included Mark Mitchell. He's the lead strategist at Chainless Change, an organization equipping returning citizens with the tools they need to rebuild their lives and organizing to end mass incarceration. We also had Sandra Dennis. She's the executive director of the Miami Worker Center, a strategy and action center building power and self-determination of South Florida's most oppressed and underserved communities. And finally, Danny Agnew. He's the co-founder of the Roots Collective, a community-based nonprofit shifting the paradigm on economics in South Florida through entrepreneurship, youth development, and community engagement. Each of them is not only doing amazing work, but they also have personally powerful lived experience with the systems they're trying to change. The conversation focused on their lived experience, lessons learned, and the things we all need to pay attention to keep change moving forward. I can't tell you how grateful I am to have all of you join me, to have a conversation about, in real time, in real life, the work that you've been doing. Danny Agnew, Sandra Dennis, Mark Mitchell. I've had a chance to interview you all, and folks had a chance to see some of you as part of the racial anthology. So this is an opportunity to just have a conversation that really sort of brings all this to life. Each and every one of you have a story behind what drove you to do what you do. And I've found that hearing someone's origin story and what drives them and their life experience really helps put in context the work they do. So I'm going to pitch it to anyone who wants to start, but just to sort of share your lived experience and what it was that drove you to do the work that you're doing in community. Ladies.
Oh no!
Ladies first. We're going to use that one.
Well, get ready. So I am an 80s baby, yay for the millennials, and I grew up in a time where in the early 90s we saw a mass influx of Haitians coming on boats called the refugee people. Really never understood as a child why Black people, my people coming from Haiti, couldn't stay where other people migrating from other countries who had fairer skin, who were white, could stay. Also from there, really saw my father, who was one of the first from his family who migrated from Haiti, really house all of his entire family as they moved into the country. And I really saw firsthand their experience when navigating a new country, discrimination based on their color, based on the language that they speak. And that really had an impact on me. And then moving from there, earlier on in my life at 10 and 14, I lost my parents. And it really, I went into public health thinking about how so much of the healthcare system emphasizes personal choices, what you eat, should you exercise. And that's not the whole story. Racism, toxic stress, the amount of weight that Black people have on us, are carrying, kills us. that really is what drives me to think about system change. What could happen if we change the systems and Black people really were to live out their full potential and their full selves? And I'll wrap this up by saying, I feel in my heart and in my soul that I'm a true child of Dessalines, that freedom fighters are in my bloodline, and so who am I not to go in that direction, to be true to my calling? And who are we as Black people who always, are raising the consciousness of this society? Who are we not to push society to be great for us, right? To make room for us, to be for us what we've been for them. And I'll pause there. Did y'all wanted me to go first?
Well, that's an incredibly powerful start, and I'm gonna kick it over to Danny.
Okay.
Same thing. I mean, I've heard your story, and you made a choice to use that to power things forward. So great to have an opportunity to sort of share with the larger world what that looks like.
I am born and raised in Chicago. My story, I had the two-family household. I actually grew up in church, but I was on the south side of Chicago. And as most people know, the stereotypes that come from a city like that, so it was poverty everywhere. Just recently, you hear stories about them closing 50 of the high schools. And so you had a bunch of Black people in different communities, but we were really all on top of each other. And so it was very difficult to strive in situations like that. I had a choice to go to the school right across the street from my house. And things just kind of spiraled out of control, and I started hanging with a group of people who, we as a youth in Chicago, you want to find your identity. And because I was surrounded around gangs, that was the thing that looked appealing to me. And so I jumped into the streets, and just, like I said, spiraled out of control. I lost a lot of my friends. Some died in my arms. Friends got killed by other friends. And so the traumatic experiences just kept happening. I ended up just really getting in deep and going back and forth to jail. I ended up with 2 felonies. In Chicago, they have the 3-strike rule, which I think is in Florida as well. And I would have automatically did 30 years in jail if I had got caught for another crime. And so I made a very conscious decision that in 2011, upon my release, that I would get away from Chicago. Because while I was in jail, I saw that a lot of the people that were in there looked exactly like me. And they were actually the smartest people I had ever met. So I started to think about how the system worked, and it's like, this is probably why they're here, because these are the people who could change the world. And so there's a system set in place that kind of holds people back. So I made a promise to myself and my family that when I got out, I make sure I stay focused, because I never was a slower individual. I was always smart, but I just made bad decisions. Because I'm from a place like Chicago and I'm kind of in tune with the streets, I wanted to create an organization that identified with individuals who are poor and in poverty, and it's called the Roots Collective. And now we're focused on real grassroots growing. We're focused on kids. We have food pantries that's run by Sharina Jones that feeds over 150 families a day. We have a Black and Brown specific marketplace that focuses on the economics within our community. And so our identity is basically building from the ground up so that we don't necessarily have to always worry about having outside help, but we can help within. And so we just continue to work, and we try to create platforms that help communities that look like us.
That is an amazing story. And for me, and what I learned through doing the first round of funding on the Racial Equity Fund was it is the lived experience of folks that really defines the kind of solutions that they come up with. And so the journeys that both of you have had that led to the Roots Collective, the work that you're doing at the Miami Worker Center, the fact that your life experience defined and helped you see things differently, I can tell how integral that is to the solutions that you've come up with. And I think the same is true for you, Mark, with Chainless Change.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. For me, I'm someone who, from as far as I can remember, was impacted by systems. I did not know it, right? I mean, growing up in public housing systems and a under-resourced school system. I eventually end up in juvenile detention systems and going through mental health courts, and somehow ended up in adult institutions where by the time I turned 22, I had spent nearly 7 years incarcerated. And along the way realized that most of my family had been incarcerated too. And so somehow, after kind of interfacing with systems for a while, I started to study and learn a little bit about how to liberate myself from that system. I felt entangled. I'd been pushed straight from juvenile systems into an adult system, and I was supposed to remain there until I was 25. And what I had to do was figure out how to get myself back into courts. And so that's what I did. I went through a process of studying and filing motions and representing myself, and ended up being able to get released, get a judge to agree to release me under certain conditions. And so I needed to be able to go out and go straight into doing something productive. And so I went straight from jail to 2 weeks later going to college. But I went to college because I just wanted to get out of jail. I wasn't really prepared for that, right? So I'm at school really kind of repeating some of the things that I learned when I was inside of those institutions. All of my formative experiences, or many of them, were inside of there. My parents my grandparents who raised me had died when I was inside of the systems, and my my actual mom was, on drugs and in and out of jail herself. At the same time, I started to kind of learn a little bit more about how those systems that I had interacted with for the majority of my life had really played a huge part on how I identified, right? I started to kind of see myself through the lens that the system viewed me, and really attach myself to some of the labels and stereotypes associated with them. And so as I was kind of on this process of learning and really self-discovery, I started to do some advocacy work. The company that I was working with decided that they didn't want me outside speaking about those experiences. I wasn't forthcoming about having a criminal record when I went to them for employment, and I just ended up working myself up into an operations manager position. And one day they were just kind of like, if this was anybody else out here talking about your criminal arrest record, we would have been fired them. But because it's you're one of the good ones. We're giving you a chance, right? And so I was just like, you know what? I'm out. I thought of this thing when I was like 14 years old. I thought it was going to be a church, Chainless Change. I used to think I was going to be a preacher. right. And so I thought, and I was just like, I'm out. I can't continue to hide my background, but also if I'm one of the good ones, what about everybody else? And so I need to do some work around addressing the issues that affect my people, and that type of work wasn't it. And so we started developing the organization. If we wanted to really have an impact, we would probably have to look at this differently. And so we started to provide supportive services for people who were incarcerated wanting to transition out, and that includes supporting them with that legal self-advocacy work that I was initially talking about. But then we also wanted to organize to address the systems that were impacting our lives. And so we had our hands on so many folks, and wanted to figure out, how do we now get these folks to move from a place where they're being impacted by these systems to transforming them. And so that's kind of how the concept of Chainless Change came to be what it is today.
All three of these are like amazing stories. And I think, you all know that over the last couple of years, a lot of heightened attention has come to racism, racial injustice, racial inequity. And a lot of money has flowed in that direction as well. And, sort of as you've watched these last few years, just sort of, from each of you, what are things that you saw change? Like, has the money flowed where you thought it would flow? Are we having the impact? And what are the things that, me being on the philanthropy side, still need to be understood and paid attention to try to make sure this stuff takes root and keeps gaining momentum. And what have you seen change, and what do you still feel like if we don't keep doubling down on that, we're going to lose traction?
I know we got started, and tons of other organizations of young folks who were fed up, who had heard about the things that happened in the civil rights movement, and that started to sprout up. And I think now there's a shift in where the money is going to, and I think that's really important, because we always say we can't reinvent the wheel, but there are people and things that are ever changing, and so you need fresh individuals to come and continue to shake this thing up, because the landscape is always changing. Because I can name tons of groups that I know that are local that never will get funding, or that never have even been looked at for funding. So I think it's really important for organizations who fund nonprofits to really just keep an eye on the streets, and then also on the flip side, there has to be a little bit of education on how to start a nonprofit, because that whole thing is a beast. It took us so long, but we finally made it, and now we're starting to see things shift. But I think it just needs to be a closer lens on the streets to really identify who's doing the work.
I like that phrase, closer lens on the street. So either one of you, like your thoughts on?
Running a smaller nonprofit, for me, it's been tough because folks are often looking for organizations that have this history, that has networks, that has infrastructure. And so what I'm noticing is that while there is some investment into grassroots entities, still a lot of stuff is out of reach that would really contribute to the growth and the impact of organizations. And so for me, I think that, a little more work needs to be done to address the mindset around who and why and how people invest in communities, and also, a little more risk in investing in smaller entities as opposed to these larger systems and institutions that people have challenges with navigating in the first place. And so I think that a little work can certainly still be done to ensure that while people are using all of these buzzwords around racism and white supremacy, that their investments aren't reinforcing those same practices, because I don't think that we're in a place now where we really have ensured that investments reflect the lip service that people are giving.
That's right. Yeah. So this idea of investments, lens on the street, risk.
Yeah. I would add that I think I think this is perfect, because I just read something on Facebook, and it was talking about how much money is thrown into startups, especially around technology, tens of millions of dollars, and some of them, succeed, and a lot of them tanks, no questions asked, right? And there's so much risk that are taken with people who don't look like us, people who don't come from our backgrounds. And there are a lot of statements that are made. There are a lot of pictures that are shown when you see uprisings happen. And it brings me to my Facebook point that America likes to see themselves as heroes, but we don't want to do the grunt work. And the grunt work and the everyday work is, how do we create a system that works for people? Because there's definitely a system that's working for some folks, but for sure not working for us, right? And to me, it's like, invest like you mean it. Invest like you want it to work. Invest like you want to take the risk on us, because we are showing that we can make it happen, right? $1 out of 15 cents, that's what we do. And lastly, I'll say, and I always want to push this envelope, is that Miami likes to love Miami, love South Florida, born and raised. I feel like I could talk about it in ways that I would like other people to talk about it. Miami likes to paint itself in a way that I'm like, you talking about no, where we live? Like our Miami? In its totality? Because what we see coming out about what's happening here, you're like, no, actually, things have worsened for our people. Evictions are on a rise. People are homeless in the streets. People can't feed their kids. Right here in Hialeah, from $1,000 to $1,600 rent 1 month, they gotta go. Overtown, Liberty City, from North Miami, Miami Worker Center organizers have been trying to figure out how to keep people in their homes. Meanwhile, people have said they had pledged money to help us out, right? It just doesn't make sense to me. And for me, It's like, we can do this hero stuff, throw all this money, and act like that's it. That's the only thing we have to do. Or we can do the systems change work that allows people to remain in their homes, that allow for children to have an actual chance and not interfacing with some of the systems that we had to, right? That's the real work. And, you know, since we're talking Black History Month, miss us with everything else. Your 10,000 once a year, your 20,000 once a year, it's not gonna cut it. We're talking about from equality to equity. We're talking about funding it like you want to fund justice, right? And liberation for our people. And that's in the millions of dollars.
For me, I think that folks are funding is really in alignment with their priorities. Their priorities aren't us, and it hasn't been. The systems that we're talking about weren't designed to benefit us, and so when you say that systems are working, who are they working for? Because they're working against the people that they were designed to work against. It's all oppression by design, and so it was intentional. And so I think that if we want to reverse that, if we want to address it, then there has to be some real honest conversations about who are you hoping to impact and how are you hoping to impact them, and then some, you know, comparison and contrast against what decisions they've made and how those have contributed to either helping or impacting or negatively impacting folk. And so I think that, you know, it all goes back to really having a conversation followed by actions, a real clear plan on how are we going to work towards undoing racism and white supremacy.
You know, one of the people asked, like, why focus on systems change? And part of it was to sort of elevate the idea. I think if you have lived a life that has been absent of systems, you actually don't really know they exist. There are folks who have equated that to walking through an automatic opening door. If you've walked up to a door for your whole life, and the door has automatically opened, and then there's someone behind it who the door's not opening for, and they're pressing the button, is the problem with the door? Or are you blaming it on the person who is pressing the button but the door's not opening? If you have lived in a world of the automatic door opening experience, you don't know these systems exist. And so it's gonna take a long time to get there, but a beginning point of helping people understand the systems that do exist, and that for a whole lot of folks of color, they are living in and through those systems that are often invisible to them, but they're shaping and defining what opportunities they have and what opportunities they don't.
In terms of that glass door example that you gave, I think that people, when they're benefited from systems, they know it. And I'll give an example. It's that rules apply to some folks. All my life, I've seen rules apply to me in ways that it don't apply to other folks. You see that, you know it, you get it. I've seen wealthy folks at UF get away with so many things that we couldn't. And so to me, it's like, how do we open our eyes to what's right in front of us? If we want to, right? Just want to share that.
Yeah, if we want to.
see it,
That's the
we'll
key, though.
see it.
Do we want to? Do we want to see that? Because then it's kind of like you have to now confront yourself. I always think of it, you know, kind of like looking in the mirror for me, right? If I'm far away, I just feel like I got it going on. But when I'm up close, I got some whiteheads here, I got some blemishes here, I got some stuff that needs some work, you know, and that's the same thing. I think, you know, folks are able to kind of stand from afar and pat themselves on the back and talk about how much of a good job they've done. But if they come up and close and personal, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. There's some folk that were left scarred. There's some blemishes, all because of decisions that were made. And a key to moving things forward is ensuring that the people who are making decisions are folk who have to live with the results each and every day. Really elevating lived experience and electing officials who are actually in the communities and members of the communities, and have family members who are in those communities that are going to be impacted by the decisions and the investments that are made. Otherwise, we'll keep ending up with the same thing.
You know, the thing that gives me hope, because if you don't live with hope, why bother, is, you know, I've looked through our data system, and when I see there were 150 folks over the last couple of years who have moved, some in $25, some in $1 million, resources to support the Racial Equity Fund. And we tried to sort of use it in a way that does look at and get at systems change and do things in a way that philanthropy doesn't usually do things. I just believe there are people who want to do things and address the things and own up to the things that you all are talking about. That's right. The hope is, can we help use philanthropy to unearth those people and give that money a place to land and put to work in a new way? That's what keeps me moving forward. That's what I believe in. That's what inspires me to, if you create the thing and you elevate it and people see there is actually a way, there are organizations, there are someone who is sourcing them and finding them and building relationships with them, you create new places for money to land and do different things. So I thank all of you for this incredible conversation, for sharing, and for your honesty. These are not easy things to talk about, and they're not easy things for people to listen to and to sort of hear truths. This was an opportunity to, in your voices, through your experiences, to help elevate them, to help make them visible. And that's a big point of trying to do the racial equity and justice anthology, right? Like, how do you take this and put it in a place where through folks' voices, those stories can be downloaded, shared, people can have the conversation, people can take you into places where you can't always be. So grateful, much respect for all that you do. Thank you. And thanks for taking the time for this.
Thank you.
It's been great.
My name is David Roper. I am a community organizer and I am the president of Green Haven Project. We teach people how to grow food in Black and brown neighborhoods. When you do pick the right people and the people on the ground doing the work, you're putting your money where your mouth is, you know, because the people that are on the ground doing the work is where the funding really need to be going to. As long as, you know, funders understand that concept and actually dive into who they're really funding and look and see, and actually maybe sometimes show up themselves, you know, come out, you know, and actually see what's happening, you know, in these arenas and these areas that people are saying that they're helping and they're trying to make some kind of change in, and like build off of that, because at that point, you know, there's no excuse. You know, you can't turn a blind eye and say you didn't know if it's right in front of your face.
Welcome to the African Heritage Cultural Arts Center. Hello, my name is Isis Roberts, and I am the Arts and Education Coordinator here at the center. The African Heritage Cultural Arts Center is the cultural hub of Brownsville and Liberty City. We offer so many classes within the dance, drama, instrumental music, vocal music, fashion, visual arts, right here at the center. We provide classes for students between the ages of 5 through 16, and even for those adults who say, I wish I would have, could have, come on over to the African Heritage Cultural Arts Center and learn the art form that you want to learn. We are looking forward to welcoming the community once again within our walls during our reopening. Join us as we continue on with providing the arts for students as well as adults. We are so honored to host all of the artists that are performing tonight. Enjoy the show.
The Hip Hop Declaration of Peace was presented to the United Nations Organization on May 16, 2001. This document recognizes hip hop as an international culture of peace and prosperity. Peace and prosperity. Peace and prosperity.
through the declaration, ain't no separation on the pavement. Lava carved out of my martyr, that's what I'm made with. Segregation in schools flow similar to the slave ships. Put them in the gut of the beast, streets name it. Give them jewels to play with, but don't teach them how to aim it. So he's blame it on the parents, it's apparent that there's damage. He expresses on the canvas just to release the madness. He said school ain't helping him reach his maximus. Started breaking down like calculus, needing napkins to factor this. Lack of comprehension causing tension, they ain't teaching them. Hip-hop curriculum, ripping them, how they reaching them. Each of them are babies, don't want another victim. Hip-hop curriculum, ripping them, how they reaching them. Each of them are babies, don't want another victim. Hip-hop curriculum, ripping them, how they reaching them. Each of them are babies, don't want another victim.
Hip-Hop Declaration of Peace, 13th Principle. Hip-hop culture rejects the immature impulse for unwarranted acts of violence and always seeks diplomatic, non-violent strategies in the settlement of all disputes.
Put your hands up, put your hands up. B-Girl Apollo, let's go, come on. Oh man, yo, y'all put your hands together for my homegirl, B-Girl Apollo. Official hip hop to the fullest. Hey yo, DJ Agent Fade, drop that. When I say hip, y'all say hop. Hip, hip. When I say hip, y'all say hop. Hip, hip. I love this music with a passion, it's embedded in my life. Knew it would last forever, I would have betted on my life. While others denounced rap, said it was just a fad. I was a nomad, writing in the basement on a pad. I took my verse to the block party and spit my skill from the corner liquor store. Now we selling a mill, two of rap's biggest icons, done for the kill. East Coast, West Coast, best coast on the hill. We used to pick up the mic for the fun and the thrill. Now there's no peace in the skill, got the beast in the grill. Got the piece to my grill, ain't no peace in this field. But you can't stop hip-hop for keeping it real. Say hip-hop. Say hip-hop. Say hip-hop. Hey, y'all wanna big up myself, Mecca aka Grimo on set. My homegirl, B-Girl Apollo. On the 1 and 2s, DJ Agent Fade. I want to send a big shout out to PATH, the Miami Foundation. And we out.
Before we close this program, I'm happy to welcome Dr. Nelson Adams, another of my dear friends and fellow trustee of the Miami Foundation. I know his words of wisdom will inspire us in our efforts towards justice and equity for the coming year.
You know, there's so many things that have inspired me tonight. Not only our participants and being a part of the Miami Foundation, which does such a great work and has been doing it for a long time and continues to impress me year in and year out. But I'm also inspired by the venue. You know, many years ago, when I say many, you can look at me and tell that it's been many when I talk about when I was a boy. But when I was 11 years old, my next door neighbor pulled up. I'd never met him before, brand new neighbor, in a brand new Cadillac. He was tall, he was dark, he almost looked unreal. His name was Cassius Marcellus Clay. Oh, you know who I'm talking about, Muhammad Ali. I am giving these thoughts in a room that he actually lived in. He was here at the Hampton House, and you know, that resonates with me tonight. Because one of the things he said that all of us remember, he would say, float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. And so I encourage each of us in our life's work, as we are passionate and compassionate, that we float like butterflies, but sting like bees. Float like butterflies and be as docile as a butterfly when that's the thing to do. Oh, but when it's time to bring the stinger on, sting like a bee. We are the beneficiaries of great things. Yes, great things. We are enjoying fruit from trees that we did not plant. Opportunities in education and housing, voting rights. It's the things that a few generations ago, just a few generations ago, did not exist. And so I encourage each of us to be and continue to be sowers. Sowers, S-O-W-E-R-S. Sowers of seeds of opportunity, of love, of hope, of vision, of provision. Seeds that will hopefully one day grow into trees that will bear fruit, not for us, but for our children and our children's children and generations yet unborn. And so tonight I'm excited, and hopefully you're excited and inspired too, to realize that now is the time, and the time really is always now for us to do that which is right. I'm reminded oftentimes that not only to whom much is given, but it's expected and required, but that we've got to let our lights shine. We've got to be authentic to ourselves. To thine own self be true, it's been said. Well, here's another spin on that, because I want you to be all in. I want you to be engaged. I want you to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. We do this by, hear this acronym, BYOB. Nope. Not what you're thinking. Be you, only better. And so we say thank you to the Miami Foundation. We thank you to each of us for what you've already done. But this is a process where we move from good to better and better to best. On this continuum of always being better, I encourage each of us to recognize that we have got to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. And so in all that you say and all that you do, let us vow this night as a community to do better and then to aspire to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. Remember it this way: good, better, best. Never ever let it rest, not until your good, my good, our good becomes our better, and our better becomes our best. Thank you so very much, and may God bless you and keep you, is my prayer.
Together with community and philanthropy, we've been amazingly fortunate to fuel important work through our funding. And we've learned so profoundly from those on the ground. We're looking ahead with tremendous excitement, resolve, and commitment to building on the powerful momentum we've been able to share this evening. That includes what we'll do through the Racial Equity Fund and also finding bold new opportunities. Through the Racial Equity Fund, we'll sustain our focus on changing systems that hold racial injustice and inequity in place. We're expanding our focus to groups doing powerful community-based work on healing the community trauma and the void of pathways to aspirations and opportunity. Both are direct consequences of historic racism and persisting inequity. How can we help groups led by people of color and grounded in their communities with their solutions that heal and that alter the very trajectory of lives? They're at the root of building communities where residents are empowered to live with a sense of safety, value, and hope.
We're also thinking a lot about generational wealth building, and we encourage you to stay tuned in the next week for us to announce a massive investment from one of our partners with a deep focus on equity. And when you see that announcement, I want you to remember that you made that happen for our community, and that if we continue to make big moves, people will continue to invest in a stronger Miami for everyone. And as we come to the end of our evening together, we want to pause and give grace to the partners who stepped up first, boldly and loudly, to Facebook, who invested $1 million in the first year of this fund, to Bank of America and Stearns Weaver, who have been funding racial equity work with us for years, to the Perez family, Daniel Lewis, Chris Adamo, and the Wolfson family, our current and previous board members, especially Carol Hall and Baron Channer, who are the reason we have seen so much traction. To hundreds of partners who gave, and to hundreds more who are doing the work on the ground, we are so appreciative of every single person who's contributed to this work for racial equity. We all have a role to play in this movement, and we are fired up to keep things moving forward. We hope you are too.
And now to close this evening's event, please welcome performance artist Osimer McCoy.
I am asphalt and fire ants, sweet blood for mosquitoes, daughter of tobacco fields, grandchild of mustard greens, muscadines fermented and turned into moonshine. I come from down south and up north. I know the aroma of outside on black feet cutting through tall grass in Lauderdale, back when all this used to be woods. Ancient Negro proverb, mango juice stains on my collar from summers in Old Orange Grove. I am just like my mother, coming and going. A soft song stays stuck in my throat like hymns floating over wooden pews in a collective utterance. I'm the crux of my mother's elbow. Forehead cradled between her armpit and chest, itchy rayon floral printed dress socks sleeping to the murmuring of ceiling fans. I desire to be a cash king in the corner store. Catch me making a bounty of $5. And here is where the block banter occurs, where the men can always find work but can't stay off the curb. After a bottle of wild Irish rose, expect the dialogue to turn into verbs and slurs. Conversations continue on into the dark, where the streetlights beam down like stars on parked cars. I know tea green Japanese silk with the faux feather lining, cascading across an orange shag rug, and the survivor of flashing lights, hurricanes, voter fraud, redlining, yellow caution tape, floodlines. I am chaos in Liberty City. Watching from across 54th Street as Norton Tire burns, juking in a post-apocalyptic movie on top of broken glass in front of Adam's grocery store. I know nothing here was made for me, but nothing would stand if I shrug. I want air that don't taste like gas. I want you to see me as God intended. I want your apology to be just as loud as your disrespect. I want the cranes shrouding the skylines to disintegrate into salt so the kids can skate on 65th Street again. I am soft sun behind lavender and cerulean skies. I am the Gandhi dancer, taking a break to sip my limeade and bite my Johnny cake, sweat creating pools in the small of my back, shading my eyes, always looking for home.
You know, I was thinking the other day, I was actually sitting here thinking about my friendship with you. Yellow hues from the crazy things we would do. Side by side, playing in the sand, Lil Bill, Blues Clues, and Franklin. But who knew how quick the hand would spin? I wish I could turn it back again. Summer heat used to tickle our feet, barefoot in the streets and mangoes that were too sweet. Fruit cups from the cookie lady, bikes laid out in the yard to signal where the fun was had, run wild to make the old neighbors mad. To be a kid again would cause my world to spin. To be your friend again would make my life begin again. And we were funny too, putting on shows, skits, and pretending we were gymnasts and pros. Do you remember that year we made a cheerleading group? Girl, we was crazy. But you know, friendships look different these days. 9 to 5s turn around and do it again. Fake attempts to keep up with time. Man, I wish we could just stop and speak our minds. When's the last time we spoke with real friends without second guessing what we were saying? Man, I can't wait to go. I finish when we get back turned into, I can't go this weekend. I have to meet this deadline ASAP. I'm drained. I want to cry, float in the sky. You got a wife, a kid, some new married friends. Our conversations are about the new perks on the job, light bills, car notes, and getting insurance from Bob. I'm losing touch with my humanity. I need to regain my sanity. Memories are fading away with each passing day. I feel them slip to gray. Man, I wish I could just go out and play.
Here, Weird Friends, produced by Frankie Midnight, Miami native. This is his new project.
Hey, this is Frankie Midnight of Weird Friends. Just letting you know that if you or anyone you know have been having suicidal thoughts or feelings of anxiety and depression, please reach out to me via Weird Friends.
WRDFRNDZ. We are here at WRDFRNDZ, Weird Friends Radio, where we are playing 808 Rock. This is WRDFRNDZ, Weird Friends, coming at you with Call Me. If you know someone who needs a call, call them, check up on them. Maybe that might be you.
I notice you've been feeling kinda down when I come around, hanging out. You got a gray cloud hanging right above you. You used to be the light of the party, clowning around. But now your light is dim and you don't seem happy at all. But if you're feeling lonely and you need someone to talk to, you can call me, call me. If you need a ear to listen, that will be my mission. You can call me, 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 call me. Call me. I know you think I'm kinda crazy. You've been watching me all night. I caught you on the low glancing, and you're looking kinda uptight. Should be on the floor dancing. Let your body and the beat romancing. Instead of sinking in a bad mood, get up and get to the groove. Cause you know you feel it, that stressing got you uptight. You gotta hear it, it's only within your mind. When you feel it, you know it's within your mind. Cause when you get it, got it, baby, you should be dancing. You should be dancing.
She looking for you, man. She acting crazy. Man, pick up the phone. I ain't heard from you in a while. Like, call me back. Later.
Every time I try to get a little time, I try to find some peace of mind, but it's hard to find. And every now and then I seem to find my way. I wanna stay in a special place, but I lose my way. I'm so fed up with this bull. I keep mixing myself up with it. I keep throwing myself back to it. And I don't even have to put up with it. It's driving me mad and crazy. It's making me sad and lazy. I gotta stop wasting my time, 'cause I'm the only one. I found I am calling to me. Found it through me. I found it inside me. I found I am calling to me. I found it through me. I found it inside me. Stop wasting my time, wasting all my time. Stop wasting my time, wasting all my time. Stop wasting my time, wasting all my time. Be the first in line, wasting all my time. Stop wasting all my. Stop wasting my time, stop wasting all my. Stop wasting my time, wasting all my time. Be the first in line, wasting all my time, wasting up my time.
Yep. Context of a generation out here. We're friends. Hey, we want to give a special thank you to the people who gave us the opportunity to do this. And yo, that's what's up. This is our last track. And dang, I'm having a ball up here, yo. This is crazy. Thank you, Context of a Generation. Simone Titania, Kiana Major. My name is Frankie Midnight. This is my Weird Friends. And we about to get on the floor. Thinking about all my night and days. I be working 9 to 9. Overworking extra overtime. Barely making to get by. And tell me why I feel so uninspired. I'm too young to feel like that. I give my all just to see me fall under the pressure that's up on my back. I just need a little break. I know I got to make some time to get back to myself. Looking in my mirror, I'm blurred. I look so unfamiliar. I don't recognize myself. Going out tonight to get my laces take flight. I'm not gonna think no more. Music's bumping loud and cheering up the crowd. I'm gonna dance until my body's sore. The music's moving through me, and I just need to dance. The beat's trying to seduce me, and I just need to dance. The rhythm's running to me, and I just need to dance. The boogie's wanna prove me, and I just need to dance. So excited, weekend's coming near. I just gotta keep my cool. I play it safe, always looking straight. Gotta make it for my food. Yo, them working days, everything's a hustle. Bustle till my back is sore. I feel the aches all over my body. Exhausted till I can't no more. I just need a little break. I know I got to make some time to get back to myself. Looking in my mirror, I'm blurred. I look so unfamiliar. I don't recognize myself. Going out tonight to let my laces take flight. I'm not gonna think no more. Music's bumping loud and cheering up the crowd. I'm gonna dance until my body's sore. The music's moving through me, and I just need to dance. The beat's trying to seduce me, and I just need to dance. The rhythm's running to me, and I just need to dance. The boogie's running to me, and I just need to dance.
hands, move your feet until you dance. I just wanna see you move your feet across the floor. Stop, clap your hands, move your feet until you dance. I just wanna see you move your feet across the floor. Stop, clap your hands, move your feet until you dance. I just wanna see you move your feet across the floor. Across the floor. Oh, music's moving through me, and I just need to dance. The beat must seduce me, and I just need to dance. I need to see everybody out there. Yo, I can't see you dancing, but you gotta dance. You know what I mean? You can't not dance to a dance song. You know me? Like, the music's running through me, and I just need to dance. Music seduce me, and I just need to dance. How you feeling, Barry? I put the mic so you don't talk. Yo, Venus, how you feeling, bro? Yeah, I feel the same way. I don't even remember my own lyrics. It don't matter, because it's all about dancing. I bring it down, fellas. And I just need to dance. The beat's trying to seduce me, and I just need to dance. The rhythm's running to me, and I just need to dance. The boogie's gonna groove me, and I just need to dance. Yo, we're Weird Friends. Thank you for having us. Context of Generation, we really appreciate the opportunity. Special shout out to Collier. And yo, this is what we doing.